Thank you for clicking on this video. This is an important experiment that I'm going to do. This is perhaps the most dangerous thing I've ever done. I am going to watch the 5 most influential fascist propaganda films ever made known to man. I'm going to be watching The Eternal Jew, which is a German fascist propaganda film. Then I'm going to be watching Metropolis, which is a communist propaganda film. Then I'm going to be watching The Sacred Sailors, which is a Japanese propaganda fascism film. Then I'm going to be watching The Birth of a Nation, which is perhaps the most racist film ever made and the most influential out of all of these, which is the birth of the KKK. And then I'm going to be watching the most popular, the most famous fascist film of all time, which is The Triumph of the Will. My only concern is that I will turn into a fascist before this is over. But I think this is important work that needs to be done so that no more madmen, no more fascist leaders can ever rise again. And if I turn into a fascist, if I turn into what I fear most, if I turn into a fascist, you have to call the authorities and to have me put away. I cannot become what I fear. God have mercy on my soul. Wow, that was a pretty dark intro, wasn't it? I promise I'm not that dark and scary in real life. So I just watched the first fascist propaganda film, The Eternal Jew. It's a Nazi propaganda film from the 40s, I believe. I guess I was expecting a bit more from this fascist propaganda film. It ended up having like no story, no narrative, no 3-act structure. It wasn't even like a speech. It was more of just a laundry list of why Jews are bad, which was kind of interesting. I guess I always expected fascist propaganda to be more subtle, but this was just not subtle at all. I'm guessing most of the country was already anti-Jew at this point, and this was just adding fuel to the fire. I mean, they said Jews were the demon that caused the corruption of mankind, that they're just the root behind all the evils, and everything that goes wrong in Germany is a Jew's fault. I mean, the main gripe they had against Jews was saying that they're greedy and that they love money, which is really weird. They would quote these Bible verses talking about money, saying that's like all they cared about, and that their love of money is not in line with German/Western values. So it was just pointing at them saying that they're greedy. They showed a picture of like these poor kids begging on the street, and they said, you might think these are just poor kids in poverty, but actually they're greedy little Jews who are just like their parents, which is really weird. I mean, there was even a point where they showed a map that showed where Jews originated from in Israel, and they showed them spreading around the globe like a plague. And then it transitioned to just a video of all these rats invading a room. So it was just Jew equal bad is basically what I'm saying. I mean, he buys and sells but produces nothing. Saying that all Jews care about is money, and that's greedy, and there's just no room in our society for a parasite like that. That's what they're saying. They even made the claim that Jews made up 98% of prostitute dealings. I just don't buy it. I think they made that stat up. It's interesting to see how people today will twist stats to say certain groups of people are responsible for all this stuff. I think they were doing it with the Jews. And man, I remember watching the movie The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and the boy asked his teacher, what if I find one good Jew? And the teacher said, you'll be the greatest explorer in the world. So that, man, they just completely drilled into these people's minds. And maybe people were like on the fence before seeing this fascist film, and this just like pushed them over the edge. Like, yeah, I guess Jews are bad, you know. We need to get rid of them. We need to have a pure, unconquerable race. I mean, they also said Jews could be anyone, you know, that the Jew could like look nothing like his culture, just completely assimilate to German Western culture, but that's not good enough. He's still a Jew deep down in there somewhere. And then they even ended the documentary with saying that Jews tortured animals and that Germans would never torture animals, which is just extremely ironic, because there was a point in the war where Germans used dogs to eat and kill babies and to kill people. So to say that Jews were the unhumane ones is just the most evil, ironic thing I've seen in a while. But anyway, it was interesting to watch. I just thought it would have more of a story. I thought it'd be a bit more subtle in trying to convince people. But it was just giving a laundry list. I guess sometimes blunt propaganda still works. Trump proves that. Alright, on to the next fascist propaganda film, The Vow, which is a Russian communist propaganda film. Hey, so I know I said I was going to watch The Vow, but it turns out it's not really a socialist propaganda film. It's more of just a movie set in Soviet Russia. And apparently Joseph Stalin did not like the movie. It got banned. So I don't feel like I could really count it as a fascist propaganda film. I did some research and I found out that Metropolis, the famous silent film, is actually a pseudo-communist film. Now there's a little bit of controversy if it's actually communist, but there's definitely Marxist ideology in the movie. The filmmaker was a German, and the movie was greatly liked by Hitler, which is very fascinating. Marxist ideology is the foundation of communism. So I think it kind of goes to show how closely intertwined communism and Nazism are. That they might hate each other, but they're actually quite similar. But first of all, this is like pretty much the most famous silent film of all time. It's the most impactful silent film of all time. There's actually a remake of this movie being directed by Francis Ford Coppola that should come out eventually. So that's kind of crazy. But the intro is kind of like a Twilight Zone intro. It's like this movie doesn't have a time or place, or it doesn't take place in our universe. It just exists outside of time, which is very interesting. It said there was a moral to the story, that there needs to be a mediator between the brain and the muscle, which is the heart. And then it showed all these factory workers. They just look like prisoners. They look like a jail. And these prisoners live below this city, Machine City. They live below the city. And then it showed the rich people living above the city in like a Garden of Eden state. It was very much like a heaven versus hell kind of example, imagery. And then there's this kind of crazy convoluted plot, which I won't give you the whole plot, but it was basically this woman from the worker city meet this guy from the rich people city. This guy wanted to tear the whole city down. He creates this robot and it's destroying the machines, and they're gonna destroy everything. But then this guy feels like he's prophesied to be the mediator between the rich and the poor. And the whole thing's about uniting classes. And that is a very communistic ideology. Hey, we're not the problem. The machines aren't the problem. It's the system that's the problem. It's God that's the problem. Uniting heaven and hell to overthrow God. It's very much Marxist. They're trying to say, just don't burn it all to the ground, but let's unite. They're saying that the machines aren't the enemy. The people is the enemy. Disunity is the enemy. And communism is all about unity and uniting everyone under one common cause. And this was a very much more subtle film. I mean, you could tell that it has an agenda, but compared to the last socialist propaganda film, which was just a laundry list of why Jews are evil, this one was way more subtle. It actually had a story. I feel like in terms of propaganda, this was a lot more effective. I mean, it's the most famous silent film ever, and I had no idea it was a communist movie. I could have ended up watching this movie just to watch it. And really great filmmaking, just from a filmmaking aspect. So yes, as far as fascist propaganda goes, this is like a 10 out of 10. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to watch next. I'm going to try and pick something that's not Nazi or communist. I might look for something Japanese when they were fascist. But yeah, I'll get back to you with that review. Hey guys, if you're still watching this video, I just want to thank you. I know this is a really weird video, and I just want to thank you for clicking on it. Alright, now let's move on. So I just watched Sacred Sailors, which ended up being a Japanese fascist film. It came out in 1943, and it ended up being banned by the US when the US occupied Japan after the Second World War. Now this ended up being an anime, so this was the first fascist film that I've seen that was targeted towards children. So, I mean, I knew this inevitably had to happen, with Hitler Youth, there's got to be a lot of fascism towards children. Now, this one had really cute drawings and animations. It was honestly in the style of like Bambi. So it was really cute and fun to watch. This was actually the most entertaining fascist film I've watched so far. A lot of the silly songs that had in it were just really cute and fun, about learning the alphabet. And then there was one about finding a cigar, which is really weird. And then there was, they had this Bambi-like drawings in this fascist context where they had silly songs about Japan and their imperial might. And there was a lyric in one of the songs that said, "The strength of Japan is in your heart." So it was also trying to hype kids up and get them really excited about their country and ready to go fight for their country. In the story, there was this pilot that came back, and he was talking to his siblings and all their little friends, telling them how cool it was to be a pilot. And all of them were like, yeah, I want to be a pilot too. I want to fight for my country too. So this was very much a war propaganda film, getting people excited to fight for their country. And to be completely honest with you, I didn't really have a problem with that at this point. I think it's fine to have a healthy sense of pride for your country. If you've seen Top Gun, it's designed to make you happy and proud of America and want to go join the armed forces in America. And there's just nothing wrong with that I see. But then there's like a shift towards the end of like the last 30 minutes of the movie, where they start talking about how Japan's just better than everyone else. They have this white guy, this white man, which they clarify that's a white man. He's not even an animal. Everyone else in Japan has these cute little animals, and here's this like ugly white guy who shows up, and he ends up betraying Japan and killing a lot of people. And then they have this battle with this American army, and the American soldiers look stupid and ugly, and they end up losing. And like they're negotiating the surrender, and the Americans just look real dumb. It reminds me a lot of how early American animation used to make fun of Native Americans a lot. So this seemed to be a bit reverse racism towards white people. And then at the very end, they show all these little cute little animal kids in Japan playing around, and it shows one like landing on this blanket, and ended up just being the American flag. So it's just pointing out how Japan is just so cool and awesome that even their kids can walk over the American flag, and that they're just better than everyone else, and everyone else is stupid. So yeah, that was kind of the message. For a kids program, I think it worked very well. It was actually quite subtle when you're watching it. If a kid was watching it, he would have picked up on just a little bit of that imperial or fascist subtext. He would have just been really happy to serve his country one day. A kid would love to fight for Japan if he grew up watching that. That was really interesting, really fun to watch an animated fascist film. But for my next fascist propaganda film, I'm going to be watching what is called the most racist film in American history. It came out in 1915, and it's all about the rise of the KKK. See you there. This one was crazy, okay? So I told you I was going to be watching The Birth of a Nation, which ended up being a 3-hour movie, which was just way too long. It was a silent film. It came out in 1950. And the crazy thing about this movie is it's perhaps the most impactful racist movie of all time. It was more like, the name of the movie is Birth of a Nation, but it's really more like the birth of the KKK. The KKK Klansmen were in decline when this movie came out. But after this movie came out, their numbers exploded. They actually borrowed things from this movie when they started spreading like wildfire across the nation. They borrowed symbols and ceremonies, the clothing, the whole white hat that came from this movie, which is just crazy that had such a big impact. Like this, usually art imitates life, or life imitated art. It was a Civil War epic, so it's 3 hours long. It covers, the first half is before Abraham Lincoln's assassination, the second half is after Abraham Lincoln's assassination. The movie starts off with this split family, one side's for the North, one side's for the South. It's been done before, kind of just showing the division in America. And after Abraham Lincoln's assassination, all of a sudden the Reconstruction era starts, and a lot of black people are starting to get freedoms for the first time. It says that black freedom equals chaos. It doesn't say that, but that's what it's showing. It shows some black people elected to office and government, and it shows them as dumb. It shows them as irresponsible. It shows them drinking alcohol at their desk and putting their feet up on the desk and eating fried chicken when they're supposed to be working. It's just showing that, oh my goodness, what have we done? We've given black people freedom, that this was just a bad idea, that this is not for black people, is what it's saying, that black people just need to stay in their place. We don't need to give them this power. This is a terrible idea. What happens is this one white woman is chased by this one freed slave, and he's trying to get her to make love with him, and she's running away, and then she ends up jumping off a cliff to escape from him and dying, which is a terrible thing, but it's greatly exaggerated. Not every black person would do that sort of thing back then. But anyway, this white guy who sees it, he says something must be done about this. There's a whole line about saving the dimly lit empire of the South, that the white race is the one race that hasn't been conquered, and how dare we give power to black people for they'll ruin us, basically. So they formed the KKK. They put on these sheets to go. They're supposed to like scare the white people because they saw that these kids using these sheets to pretend to be a ghost. So they thought they could use that to scare black people. So they find the black guy who got the girl murdered, and then they lynch him. And it's basically they're being a bunch of vigilantes. They see themselves as like Batman. They're going and taking the law in their own hands and delivering justice when the law won't. So it's this whole glorification of KKK, of vigilantism, and taking the law into your own hands. There's this whole kind of insurrection with this one governor who sends his army to take out the KKK, to surround this town. And the KKK group up their members and they go defeat the evil Union-like general. And, they save the day. I mean, they really look like heroes in this movie. And so, yeah, it's this whole idea where the KKK has this policy to disarm the black people, to take that power back away from black people because they don't deserve it. They need to know their place, and us giving them power is just going to ruin society. It's going to destroy our empire. And why would you, in this movie's idea, give a lesser animal weapons? It's just a bad idea. So yeah, they disarm the black people. They looked as heroes. The last line of the film is talking about why can't we forget the glory and the glorious ideal of having peace and the Prince of Peace, reference to Jesus, and reference to the KKK providing peace, being like peacekeepers, and righting the natural order and putting white people back on top where they should be. And in their head, just like Planet of the Apes, if you give black people power, it's like letting monkeys roll over. So that's the whole idea of the film, which is just crazy bonkers. It definitely reflects what people were thinking back then. It says, hey, there's all this chaos happening, because there definitely was chaos in the Reconstruction era. And it's saying it's black people's fault. The power black people have needs to be taken away from them. And if the law won't, we should just do it ourselves. And that's the whole origin of the KKK. They're racist Batman, pretty much. So this was a pretty crazy film. I didn't know there was such a racist American film ever made, but this certainly was the most racist American film ever made. The next film I'm going to be watching, it's the most famous fascist propaganda film. It's another German one. It's called Triumph of the Will. It's basically Hitler's plea to the masses to become a Nazi. So I'll get back to you with that one. Okay, so I just watched Triumph of the Will, which is the most famous form of fascist propaganda ever made. Pretty much a big old pep rally done by Hitler in 1936. But yeah, it was crazy. It's this whole big parade. Hitler and all these other Nazis are just marching through, just like NBA basketball game. Everyone's just cheering, going wild as soon as they see him. A report of someone who was actually there said that when they saw Hitler, it was like they were seeing Jesus, like they were seeing this Messiah. It was like this weird gothic horror of worship. People just reaching out, saying, we want our Führer, we want our leader, we want Hitler. They made him like a god, just wild. And it had all these like kid games going on, had like picnics, had all these marches, all these military escapades with planes and marches. There was a lot of Hitler youth there. Hitler actually spoke directly to him, which is pretty crazy. Multiple speakers, a lot of people coming up and just kind of hyping up Hitler and all that he's accomplished. And yes, when Hitler finally got up there and gave his speech, there was one thing I noticed in the speech that I think is like the main ingredient of any fascism: loyalty. You have to put extreme emphasis on loyalty. Success in my fascist group, in my fascist party, in my Nazi party is how loyal are you. The more loyal are you, the better person you are, the better Nazi you are, the more acceptable society you are. You just have to be completely sold out for this man, his idea, because he's going to protect you and take care of you. Hitler was actually very charismatic. Even though I was watching it in German with English subtitles, I could feel the energy. I mean, he was passionate. He was speaking directly to people, directly to the youth, giving them hope, giving them a purpose. One thing Hitler kept referring to is that failure couldn't be an option. You couldn't mess up. He was putting so much stress, so much importance on it, that it was everything depended on, like the weight of the multiverse depended on their loyalty to the regime. He also gave them hope, saying that what they're doing now is going to be reflected in 1,000 years, and it would be solely due to their sacrifices today, to what they wrestled and struggled with. Another thing Hitler did was refer to everyone, all Nazis, as like a single organism. Like him and everyone else, there's no like leader ruling over people. They're just one single organism. It's actually kind of communistic in that way, but they're just like one being, one Nazi party, one pillar, as he would say. There's a quote at the end that kind of reflects that. It said, "It's not the state that created us, but it is we who have created our state." It's this one single organism who's created this state of living, this set of beliefs and values and way to live that's going to last the next millennia, according to Hitler. It's very sad to know what was really going behind the scenes and what Hitler was doing to these people. I mean, he captivated their hearts and their cry. It 100% could be done again today. I put together about the 5 major points that I've discovered about fascist propaganda. Number 1, you have to be proud of your country or whatever group you're calling yourselves, whatever political party. You have to be proud to be a Nazi. This was reflected in the Japanese anime, where they sung a song about the strength of Japan is in your hearts. You have to be proud. You have to cheer and be proud of what you are or what you're doing. Number 2, sorry if the camera's shaking. I got a dog on the couch doing stuff. But number 2, you have to have a hero archetype. You have to feel like you are responsible for the success of your country. This was reflected in the Birth of a Nation, the racist KKK movie, where they show this guy creating the KKK, going and lynching this person, and just look like a total hero, like a total like Clint Eastwood cowboy. Man, that guy's a hero, and this guy's like Batman. I want to be like him. You gotta give people this hero archetype, like they too can be a hero. Because if someone's depressed and down their lives, like they were back in 1930s Germany, then the idea of them getting to actually be a hero, even if it's at something evil, at least they get to be a hero at something. And then number 3 is loyalty. Success has to equal loyalty in whatever group you're forming. You have to give people the sense that it's okay to totally give yourself over to me because it's going to make you a better person. It's causing people to blind themselves, put blinders on to what's actually going on because they think that in the end it's all going to be worth it. And it also causes people just to trust Hitler without questioning his motives. Also, disunity equals evil. You can have any disunity. That's why they got rid of the Jews. They had to choose a whole part of the civilization to cut off and then move away, so that way they could have complete unity based on something, which Hitler's case was race, the perfect Aryan race. And then finally, you have to give people hope that you're creating something that lasts forever. That's one thing Hitler kept referring to, that this millennia will last forever. This will last forever. Another thing with the disunity one is with the Metropolis film, the whole thing was uniting the classes, uniting everyone under a single cause. So it actually does relate to communism quite well. But yeah, the 5th one is 100% the creation of something that lasts forever. You have to give people hope that at least they're going to be a part of a legacy that even if they're dead and gone, it actually caused them to be willing to give their lives to this thing because people will remember them in the future, whereas in their current state, they might feel like no one is going to remember them, no one's going to love them after they die. So you're basically just creating a false hope as a fascist leader, is what you're doing. So this has been an incredible journey of studying and watching these 5 incredible films in terms of impact and influence. It's crazy to see what Mad Men can do to society. Please tell me other forms of fascist propaganda you want me to look at. I want to do more of these type videos. This has been very interesting, and I like the idea of getting to do some research. But yeah, it's crazy the impact that a fascist leader can have. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. Subscribe. Join my fascist YouTube channel.